The execution chamber aboard the Zurelian dreadnought was quiet, too quiet for a moment meant to send a message across the stars. 100 alien dignitaries lined the obsidian balconies above, their bioluminescent eyes fixed on the lone human below. Bound at the wrists. Shirtless. Bloodied but standing. No rank insignia. No armor. Just pale skin marred by bruises and a cauterized cut across his ribs. He looked ordinary. And that unsettled Commander Ilari Voss more than she expected. From her post near the king's throne, she leaned forward, studying him. His chest rose and fell slow. Measured. Not panicked. Not broken. His eyes, gray, unreadable, swept the chamber with a gaze that seemed to take notes. The announcer's voice rang through the air, polished and venomous. For crimes against the crown and for the murder of His Majesty's bloodkin, this human is sentenced to execution. Let all in this galaxy understand. The king raised a hand. Silence snapped the chamber shut. Then a nod. The Zurelian soldier stepped forward. The weapon hummed, a photon blade set to kinetic round. Quick. Brutal. The human did not flinch. The shot cracked. It punched through his abdomen. Blood sprayed in a crimson arc. He dropped to one knee. Then another. He was dying. Everyone knew it. And then he laughed. It started as a low, wet chuckle, warped by the blood in his mouth. Then louder. Rising. Whole. Intentional. Laughter. Not manic. Not delusional. It was knowing. The soldier froze. The king leaned back, expression unreadable beneath his jade veil. Murmurs rippled through the balconies. Some hissed. Others looked to their advisors. Commander Ilari didn't move. She studied the human like a puzzle cracking open. He looked directly at her. And smiled. That's it, he rasped. That was your message? Ilari's breath caught. He shouldn't be speaking. He shouldn't be standing. But he was. Blood dripping down his side, spine straight, face pale, but smiling with something deeper than defiance. He turned his gaze upward, locking eyes with the Galactic King. You think this ends with me? His voice was hoarse, but clear enough that every translator implanted in every alien's skull did its job. The king said nothing. You just declared war on extinction, the human whispered. And Earth heard you. Then he collapsed. The chamber held its breath. Ilari stepped back, suddenly cold. The laughter echoed long after his body hit the floor. And then came the sound that chilled her worse than any human weapon ever had: silence. No celebration. No triumph. No declaration of victory. Because every being in that room knew something had gone wrong. Very wrong. The execution had been meant to shame Earth. To break their spirit by killing a man said to be their diplomat. Instead, it had triggered something ancient and terrifying. 6 hours later, Earth's final message arrived. No encryption. No code. Just a plain broadcast. 7 words. Every alien comm system received it at once. You killed our women! We kill gods! Ilari stood in the command tower, eyes glued to the screen as that phrase repeated. The transmission refused to terminate. Each time the signal cycled, it altered slightly. On the 5th loop, the words were embedded in video footage. Earth's capital. Empty streets. Civilians calmly boarding underground shelters. No chaos. No panic. Just readiness. The human wasn't a diplomat. He was a fuse. And the detonation had just begun. Commander Ilari Voss hadn't slept. The royal palace was quiet now, too quiet for a civilization on the brink of something it didn't understand. She sat alone in the palace's intelligence vault, the cold glow of holographic projections casting sharp angles across her face. Her uniform, once crisp, hung loosely, shoulders tense, fingers trembling slightly as she scrubbed back through the footage for the 4th time. Frame by frame. The human's face. That moment, just before the laughter began. There. A twitch. Not of pain. Of recognition. Pause, she commanded. The AI froze the image. Ilari leaned in. His lips parted before the laugh. Not reflexive. Intentional. Calculated. His eyes had scanned the room, and for the briefest instant, locked on her. He saw her. Not just her presence, her doubt. "Why me?" she whispered. The AI did not answer. It never did. Behind her, the chamber door hissed open. High Consul Zarek entered, his armored limbs clicking against the polished floor. Towering, broad-shouldered, eyes glowing like carved emeralds, he looked like a god among mortals. Ilari didn't rise. "Still watching the corpse's comedy act?" Zarek scoffed. "It wasn't comedy," she replied flatly. "It was a signal. He was dying. He was delivering." Zarek crossed the room in long strides, motioning to the paused screen. "You've always had a soft spot for humans. Don't let it cloud your analysis." Ilari stood then, finally meeting his gaze. "You didn't feel it, did you? That silence in the chamber? After the shot?" Zarek blinked. "It was respect." "No. It was fear." She pushed a second projection into the air, Earth's last transmission. The 7 words pulsing against a black backdrop. "You killed our women. We kill gods." It wasn't encrypted. It wasn't even hidden. No threats. No list of demands. Just a verdict. Zarek dismissed it with a wave of his clawed hand. "Primitive theatrics. We've dealt with louder species. Earth is scattered, underpowered. They've been pacified for decades." Ilari's voice dropped, low and cold. "What if they were never pacified? What if they were waiting?" Zarek's expression shifted, just enough for her to see the crack. Doubt. He turned and exited without another word. Alone again, Ilari loaded satellite logs. She flipped through the systems closest to Earth's last known fleet positions. Empty. Empty. Gone. Entire armadas had vanished from tracked space. No debris. No comms. Like a ghost fleet slipping beneath the waves. She sat back, heart thundering. This wasn't rebellion. It was preparation. She tapped into her private interface, pulling archived dossiers on the executed human. The name was redacted. No rank. No background. Just a code, E0.1. Origin Earth. Status, non-combatant. She frowned. Liar. Her fingers hovered above the console, then tapped into classified diplomatic comms. One message stood out, flagged but never translated. A file attached, human text. Fragmented audio. She played it. A man's voice, the same one from the execution, whispered. "One last warning. Before we go quiet." The timestamp was 4 weeks before his death. Ilari's blood chilled. This wasn't rage. This wasn't desperation. It was strategy. A slow, patient blade sliding between ribs. And they had pulled the trigger thinking they'd silenced him. Instead, they'd lit the fuse. As the palace domes reflected the twin suns of Zurelia Prime, alarms flared in the lower sectors. Unscheduled signal disruptions. Seismic activity off-world. Supply routes blinking offline one by one. And across the galaxy, Earth's systems went dark, like stars winking out. One by one. By one. The first outpost fell without a sound. No warning. No distress call. Just static where orbital signals used to hum. One moment, Port Verelion was a thriving refueling station orbiting the gas giant Drex 9. The next, it was a ring of molten debris rotating around nothing. No one escaped. No one fought back. No one saw the attack. Commander Ilari Voss stood alone in the war chamber, staring at the growing list of vanished sites. 16 now. 16 Zurelian colonies, each erased within the last 72 hours. "Still no message," whispered Subcommander Thorell, his voice brittle with disbelief. Ilari didn't answer. Her eyes locked on the map as red points winked out one by one, replaced by cold, dead gray. She clenched her jaw. This wasn't warfare. This was surgical extinction. "They're not attacking us," she said at last. They're removing us. Thurl blinked, scales pale against his cheeks. You think this is vengeance for one man? Ilari turned, her expression carved from stone. No. I think that man was our warning, and we laughed. On the edge of known space, the crew of the Vraxian Herald prepared for routine docking with the Zurelian storage depot. But as their vessel approached, they found the hangar doors wide open, and the interior lights flickering. No response on any frequency. Pilot Hurek frowned. They left the emergency shields down? Not protocol, murmured the navigator. That depot held 3 billion credits worth of fuel cells. They docked anyway. Only 2 crew members stepped through the threshold. They didn't return. 30 seconds later, the Vraxian Herald exploded from the inside, hacked by an onboard virus traced to a human signature. Back in the war chamber, Ilari stared at the footage. Frame by frame, the destruction unfolded with brutal precision. Still, Earth said nothing. No declarations. No broadcasts. No gloating. Just silence, and method. Zurelian generals argued for countermeasures. Firebomb human colonies. Deploy viral nanites. Show strength. Ilari remained still. We're reacting like kings, she said finally, voice low. But they're not fighting like rebels. High Consul Zarek, eyes tired now behind his golden helm, studied her with something new, respect. Then what are they? She looked at him. And gave the answer no one wanted to hear. They're undertakers. The next 24 hours brought chaos. Zurelian trade convoys scattered to avoid annihilation. Supply chains ruptured. Planetary governments screamed for help. But Earth never arrived in force. No fleet. No broadcasts. Just disappearances. The last to go silent was an orbital academy over Yirash Moon, home to the next generation of elite war tacticians. Ilari watched its final transmission. One image. Burned into every monitor. A single, black insignia, a circle of 13 stars, and the outline of a laughing man. Ilari's blood ran cold. That man, he, had been someone. Not a soldier. Not a diplomat. Something else. A signal. A mask. A myth. A weapon. And Earth had more. As the chamber lights dimmed in warning of another blackout, Ilari stood from her console. Prepare evacuation routes across capital cities, she ordered. And recall all exploration fleets. Now. Zarek hesitated. You believe they'll come here next? They already have. She handed him a datapad. On it, schematics showing Zurelian communications relays, rewritten days before the execution. By human code. They were in our systems before we fired the first shot. Silence. Then, the distant, rhythmic thrum of planetary defense systems spinning up. Too late. Across the palace's sky, a shimmer cut through the clouds. Not bright. Not loud. Just wrong. Ilari stepped outside. Above her, the stars shifted. Not naturally. Not slowly. Something moved across the sky, a shape cloaked in the black between stars. No warnings. No hails. Just presence. Humanity had arrived. Not to argue. Not to plead. But to answer. The silence in the war chamber was oppressive, thick with unspoken grief and unspent rage. Earth's council, what remained of it, stood motionless beneath the banner of a shattered globe, staring at the transmission's final frame, the execution dais, still wet with blood. Elias Quinn didn't blink. His jaw was locked tight, his arms behind his back in a stance that dared the universe to test him again. Beside him stood Admiral Kamari, her dark eyes rimmed red but dry. She had cried earlier, when the first colony fell, when her niece was among the 22 women chosen for Galactic rebalancing. But now her grief had hardened. Everyone in this room had learned the same lesson in the same hour. Humanity's mercy had reached its limit. We begged, Kamari said quietly. We petitioned. We showed them mercy. They answered with slaughter. No one moved. No one objected. No one dared. At the head of the chamber, A frail old man in civilian robes leaned forward, placing a single trembling hand on the console. His voice, when it came, was hoarse. Too many hours without sleep, too many dead too fast. This was a message, he rasped. Not just to us. To all species without thrones. If they can kill our women, our teachers, our mothers, our daughters, in public without consequence. He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Quinn stepped forward. The room seemed to lean into him, pulled by the gravity of what they already suspected he would say. Then let us send a message back, he said. Kamari's voice was low. Retaliation? No, Quinn replied. Erasure. There was no applause. No roar of approval. Just stillness. Everyone in that room understood what the next words would mean. We target the throne world. We don't just answer this, he said, eyes like steel. We end it. But the Galactic King, 1A began. Quinn turned to him, not with anger, but something colder. Has made himself a god. We will remind him what it is to bleed. Kamari nodded once. I'll assemble the fleets. Unofficially, we're already mobilizing. The other species are watching us. Most are afraid. Some are quietly cheering. Then let them watch, Quinn murmured. Let them see what happens when you touch the last sacred thing we had. Silence again, but this time it buzzed with purpose. In the next chamber over, deep beneath the council floor, the Earthborn had already begun assembling. The true warriors, off books, off record. Some hadn't worn a uniform in years. Some had never taken one off. Among them stood the one they'd all heard whispers about. A woman in a plain gray hoodie, eyes shadowed by a scorched cap. No insignia. No salute. Just a quiet presence. Is it true? A younger soldier asked her. You're the one who... Doesn't matter, she said. But they said you. I laughed when they shot me, she replied softly. That's why they remember. He fell quiet. She turned away and began checking the magnetic lock on her gauntlet. Behind her, others suited up. Wordless. Focused. Human. The countdown had already begun. In orbit, the first wave of stealth frigates slipped into silence, their engines dimming as they prepared to ghost past the galactic border. On their sides, in white paint, was scrawled a single phrase in multiple languages. We asked for peace. You demanded extinction. Back in the council chamber, Elias Quinn stood before the transmission terminal and sent one final message to the galactic throne. His face was blank. His voice was calm. Your king executed our women in public. We will not mourn them in silence. We will not forgive. And we will not stop. You lit this fire. Now burn. Then he smiled. Just once. And the feed went dark. The silence in the command chamber was unnatural, thick, almost suffocating. Across the hollowed-out asteroid base of the UE Retribution, every officer stood frozen, eyes glued to the center screen. A live feed flickered, grainy, but unmistakable. On it, the Galactic King's blood still glistened on the execution dais. His crown rolled off-screen, forgotten. Are we broadcasting? General Soraya Reed asked, voice calm but taut with purpose. Yes, ma'am, replied Lieutenant Bishop, hands trembling on the console. All 12 systems. Civilian and military bands. Reed nodded. Her uniform, usually immaculate, was marred with soot and singed fabric from the drop assault 3 hours prior. Her face bore a deep gash from temple to cheekbone, unstitched, raw. She hadn't paused to treat it. Not until the job was done. They watched him murder our women like they were nothing, she murmured, stepping forward into the camera's center view. Now they watch us answer. The camera stayed on her, Reed's cold eyes, the ragged breath in her throat, the burn of fury that hadn't dulled since Earth's skies lit with the first news of the massacres. Her voice dropped to a deadly whisper. Message received, Your Majesties, she said. We're past mercy now. She signaled a cut. The transmission ended. The chamber erupted. Dozens of analysts and officers began relaying data, commands, heat signatures. But Soraya didn't move. She stared at the screen, the dead king's expression burned into her memory, not fear. Confusion. He hadn't understood until the final second. That was what disturbed her most. Colonel Rafi stepped beside her. His voice was low. We intercepted a distress call from the Zenthii perimeter. Empire troops are mobilizing across 3 sectors. Retaliation's coming. Let them come, Soraya said. They don't understand yet. But they will. She turned from the screen and walked toward the war table, its center displaying a holographic projection of the known galaxy. Half of it glowed red, the symbol of the Zenthii Empire pulsing like an infected wound. They think we're angry, she continued. That we're grieving. That we'll lash out, maybe win a battle or 2, then burn out. Are they wrong? Rafi asked. Soraya's lips curled upward, not in a smile, but something sharper. They've never seen what happens when humanity decides to win. There was a beat of silence. Then Lieutenant Bishop leaned in again, pale-faced. We're receiving an incoming transmission. Origin Earth. High encryption. Soraya's brow furrowed. Put it through. The screen lit up with static, then a slow, stabilizing image. A single figure emerged, face shadowed, but voice clear. This is Directive Cobalt, the voice said. Authorization, Eden-level clearance. Soraya Reed, you are hereby granted full access to the Ash Protocol. Rafi's breath caught. They're real? No one had ever spoken of the Ash Protocol out loud, not in decades. A Black Ops failsafe from Earth's very past. A contingency plan for one scenario, the extinction of compromise. Soraya stared at the screen. You're sure? Humanity no longer negotiates, the voice replied. The protocol is yours. Execute it as you see fit. The screen went dark. Around the table, no one spoke. A weight hung in the air, thicker than war. Soraya placed her hands on the war table. Bring me the carrier fleet. Alert the Echo-class saboteurs. We're done fighting by their rules. Rafi didn't move. You're serious. Ash Protocol. I'm not starting a war, Colonel, Soraya said, locking eyes with him. I'm ending one. The lights in the chamber dimmed. Red alert sirens began to pulse, low and rhythmic. As the Retribution prepared for jump, Soraya Reed stood alone at the viewport, watching stars stretch into motion. Her heart was a furnace, silent, focused, deadly. This wasn't vengeance. This was legacy. And Earth would no longer be underestimated.